Welcome back to another video on my channel. Today I'm going to be doing a video that's a little bit different than what I normally do, although I have to admit my content on my channel is pretty sporadic. But anyway, I am starting a new series. This is going to be called Writers Wednesdays. I got this idea from a friend of mine who actually posts Wattpad Wednesdays on her YouTube, Instagram, or whatever, and I'll put her Instagram in here so you can check her out and her work. But yeah, we're going to do Writers Wednesdays. I don't think this is a really unique concept, but now that I'm shifting gears into full-on writer mode, I thought maybe it'd be helpful for me to share some tips and tricks for you in case you're interested in writing or interested in writing a book as well. This episode is going to be more towards the writing side of things, but I'll also give tips and tricks about different aspects of like the business side of writing as well. So yeah, if you're interested in that, just keep on watching. So this Writers Wednesday is gonna be all about one of my favorite things to do, and something that I just had like a self realization that I like to do. But it's gonna be about writing monsters, writing creatures, writing anything that's like non-human but could have some sort of character impact in the story. I will be doing an episode on like character writing in and of itself, so be on the lookout for that. But I thought this topic would be good because it kind of bridges like stuff that's already on this channel with stuff I want to keep doing on this channel in terms of Writer Wednesdays. So yeah, monster writing. So I've always been a fan of like scary movies and stuff, and clearly scary movies, sci-fi, things like that. So obviously those are things that have creatures in them. And I do draw a lot of inspiration from that. But clearly, this is something that's been with me since childhood as well. Clearly, oh, look, he's kind of beat up. But yeah, I have a Squirtle pillow with me right now. I have my Pokemon doll wall collection. And then, my Pokemon tattoo. Like, I love Pokemon, and like the whole entire show is just creature collecting mechanics. I love watching Face Off. If you haven't watched that show, you should. It's like makeup artistry for special effects makeup, and they literally all they do is just make monsters, and it's so cool. I don't know why it's different, but I absolutely love it. So I would like to call myself a connoisseur of sorts of just different monsters, and just really how can you write your own monster that's really cool and something that could either really really creep people out or something that is one of the more cutesy monsters that people are going to absolutely love. So yeah, let's just kind of talk about that today and see if I can give you guys any sort of concrete advice. First and foremost, my book Cursed Fate does have quite a few monsters in it. So in the plot, like there's a guardian deity for each of the princesses, right? And although they're not intrinsically monsters, they are fantastic creatures that have powers, and they're very much based on real animals, but then they morph into something that's extraordinary, right? Um, and I think that's a great place for people to start out as well. I feel like a lot of people, when they're trying to write monsters, they get overwhelmed because they feel like they have to be completely creative or like come up with something brand new that nobody's ever seen before. And sometimes, A, that's a lot of pressure, but B, sometimes it just doesn't read well either. So what I like to do is like, I like to have a very clear vision of real world. For my guardian deities, they're all based off of an animal from Madagascar that lives there now or has lived there in the past. So I have a coelacanth, a calf, and a lemur, and a giant devil frog. That is like a more prehistoric animal that doesn't necessarily live there anymore. But yeah, but all of them can like grow to be giant in size. The lemur tends to adopt more human features as well, just because he can speak, he's more well developed, he's got culture too, right? And we'll get into what culture is in a minute, but so yeah, so basically very simple concept. Like I'm basing this off of an animal and then I'm adding features to it. So that could easily be interpreted as maybe like I know like a lot of insectoid creatures kind of steal this. It's literally just based off a single insect, but they're given human-like features, or it's like an animal that's given human-like features, or you could do animal fusions as well. I think the first one that kind of pops up in my head is like, I mean, you have like mermaids, right? Like they're half people, half fish. I'm gonna try to think of one that's not a human hybrid. Oh, what was that? That episode of Kim Possible, right, where they had the cuddle buddies or whatever. Do you guys remember that? I feel like I'm triggering something in my brain. Where they had, it was basically just a spoof for Beanie Babies, but it was animal fusions. So what was it like? They had like an otter butterfly or something, and then they had a rhino and something else, but they would just fuse two animals together. That is very common, that is very popular, and I feel like that's an easy way to make an interesting creature. And like, or like a hippogriff, or a griffin. Like we already have those sorts of creatures in nature, or not in nature, but in different folklore, and you could easily just like look to that for inspiration for your own fusion hybrid creature. So yeah, we covered just making your creature solely based off of one animal, and then adding fantastic elements like maybe it's giant, maybe it's growing in size, maybe it is a different color, and then the second part of that you can take to a further extreme is fusing two animals together to create a creature that way, and that's also a way to create something cuter than it normally would. And then another option, three, is kind of going back like based off of monsters that already exist. Um, you know, I'm doing this right now. So I have a new story. I have so many different stories, but I have another story archived. I literally just came up with it yesterday. That is going to be centered around vampires, right? How many times have you read a story about vampires? How many times have it's a common trope. Vampires exist everywhere in the world, and there's so many different versions of them. So you might be like, well, I don't want to do something that's already been done. That's kind of basic, whatever. You can take a like a creature that already exists in like common culture, and just tweak it a little bit, right? So in the book, my current book, Cursed Fate, we have some aquatic vampire creatures almost. So it's the same sort of concept where they just like try to eat you. They have fangs, they have blood, but they also have fins, and they swim really fast through the water. They're still dead, like people brought back to life, but they're aquatic vampires, right? Um, it doesn't seem like much of a twist, but there's a lot you can do with that in terms of design. Like you could do webbed feet, or you can give them gills, or you can literally interpret them. Like I think it'd be really cool to do one that's like an anglerfish, with a light, and make that almost like a vampiric creature, especially since it's like in the dark already, and it kind of has that sort of like super creepy like concept as well. So having like an aquatic vampire based on that would be really really cool. If you use it, credit me though, please. But it just, you get the ball rolling like that. You just kind of fuse different ideas together. And so this is a good way to make like basic creatures. And so, like I said, like I have other vampire creatures I'm working on now, where I basically just fuse vampires with some other real life animal in the world. I wrote one of them to have like pincers, kind of like a bug, instead of your traditional fangs. Not sure if it's been done before. It probably has. And even if it has, that's okay, because you're creating a whole new character with a new name, new personality, new setting, everything like that. I feel like, again, I'm going to stress that I know everybody wants to really try to be like super duper unique and creative, but I feel like that pressure to be different can really block some creative genius, because um, no matter what you do, it's going to be different because it comes from you, right? As long as you're not plagiarizing somebody else, it's going to be unique because it comes from you, and that's what's important and special. So yes. So the third tip, kind of, is like building on a monster that already exists. And this could be folklore that's, so like if you are writing a story that takes place in a specific area, specific country, specific region, that already is based off of something real, I think it would be helpful to look into the lore that's present there. Like, say you're writing a story that takes place in Northern California. Girl, that's Sasquatch country. You know what I mean? Like, you could easily write something about, like, a Sasquatch, or, like, a Bigfoot, or, and, like, reinterpret that as something else. You could make it or even if you just want to take that monster and transplant it to a different part of the world, you could easily turn it into more like an orangutan-looking Sasquatch that lives in a more Asian country, or uh, something like that, or like a Yeti creature, but it's coming from the polar ice caps because they're melting, so it's going to be looking a little different than the Yeti we see in the Himalayas. Um, all good ideas, right? And here I'm just spitting them out like this, just because you have to practice taking what's done and then framing it in a different setting. That's my biggest advice. And I know this video kind of sounds like I'm rambling, but I'm doing my best to keep my thoughts coherent. So we have step 3, which is taking a monster that already exists and just putting a twist on it. So step 4, step 4 could be just you creating something completely brand new. And if you have the capacity to do that, toodles to you, congratulations. Obviously people have, like, somebody had to come up with, the whole Lovecraftian type monster. Like, those are pretty unique in my opinion. But even if you see, like, even the Demogorgon, it looks kind of like a dog that's just kind of skinned. So if you can come up with something like brand new, great. That's great on you. But I think also this is when we start getting into writing culture for a creature, which isn't my phrasing. I've heard that in other like monster design shows, like Face Off, where you build a backstory and a personality and lore for a creature. So this would greatly influence like how your creature is perceived, and how it's interpreted, but also like it can reinforce physical mechanics of the creature. And I think the best tip for that is to try not to over explain things, but just to highlight, if that makes sense. So, for example, when I was writing General Anka, which is the lemur character in my book, I made a very clear decision that I wanted him to give this essence of somebody who is a military ranking person. This was partially inspired by the idea that like I was doing research on lemurs, and that's another point I want to hit home. Like, do research on the animals that you're inspired by, or whatever you're inspired by. Just do a ton of research and make sure you get good information and understanding of the actual animals that you are basing it off of, because that's just going to make your creature so much better. So General Anka as a character is very military focused, very obsessed with rank, very obsessed with his appearance and more like his reputation. And I kind of based that off of the fact that lemurs are very social creatures by nature. They also, I think a group of lemurs is actually called a troop. So, that's kind of like a literal inspiration. But even just like their social structures are very important to them. Grooming is especially important to lemurs. So they're obsessed with grooming. And they hate water, I guess. So I took all these things and really wanted to craft a character based on what's intrinsic in the nature of lemurs. They're also a female-dominated society, in case anybody was curious. So I wrote a male character that, despite being obsessed with rank, wouldn't try to overpower or challenge the princess in any way, because it is literally not in his nature to do that, right? He listens to the highest ranking female. And I feel like this is also really common when people make like insectoid creatures or alien creatures, because or like when you write something that's like inspired by a bee, it tends to be a more matriarchal culture, or like people who write insects, it's very easy to incorporate animal social structures into the lore of the creatures or aliens or whatever you're writing, for your scenario, because there's already a written set of rules that make sense and they're easily recognizable and people will know them. I would dissuade from trying to purposely change that, because it might confuse the audience. Like, if you all of a sudden wrote like a bunch of aliens that are based off of bees or ants or whatever, and you make the ruler a king, the reader might see that and be like, wait, but that doesn't necessarily make sense, because this already happens. Not saying you couldn't, but it's just like, it just adds to the lore and the mechanics if you literally just talk about like things that already relate in nature, especially if you're pulling inspiration directly from one animal or source. You can also get inspiration from plants and things too. I'm when I write, I always try to set scenery first. That's just something that I'm really comfortable with and I know how to do. So even just physical descriptions of characters can say a lot about their personalities as well. The way their fur pattern is or where they live, that also says a lot about a culture and a society. Like if you think of like Ewoks, I think them living in trees the way they do is screams just as much about their character or about their culture as anything else in the Star Wars franchise concerning Ewoks. Um, so yeah, just also thinking about the environment, like that automatically plays into archetyping. Like if you have creatures that are set on or who live in some sort of desert environment, you automatically, based on what we already know, like the desert's arid, it's harsh, it's hard to survive there. So you're gonna automatically assume that whatever lives there is more of a scavenger-based creature, or something that has to retain a lot of water, something that is a little bit more rogue. There's all these already preconceived notions. And like I said, you can feel free to break those if it's purposeful for the plot and for your character. But I would just like keep that in mind, keep the setting in mind as well when you're creating your creature, because it's not just about the creature, but it's about like, and it's not just about like, whether they have sharp teeth or whether they're really scary. It's all of it, right? It's like, how do they hunt? How do they move, especially movement? Um, you know, when I wrote in Curse Fate, when I wrote my introduction scene for the scary aquatic vampires, they climb down stalagmites like water, right? So think about something emerging from the shadows is super scary and it's like dripping along with the water. You have this association with water, but also stone and kind of like something inorganic or something that's not supposed to be there, right? And then when it hits the water, it swims like a fish and everything else. And, I took a lot of inspiration. I literally made the comparison for them, like piranhas, like they go into a frenzy. They can't control themselves, right? It's completely animalistic. But even just with those few words, you already get such a strong sense of like what this is, and like you're supposed to be afraid of it, right? It's different if you're gonna like write something like Jigglypuff coming and crawling through the stalagmites. It doesn't fit with the appearance, right? So I feel like these are kind of like unspoken rules. Like a lot of this can seem like common sense, but if you're writing and you're leaving out scenery descriptions, and if you're relying solely on dialogue to get you through, you're missing opportunities to really immerse the reader, I think. So that's just another tip too. Like I think probably the one that's overlooked a lot, because I know writing scenery can be boring or it can be really hard for a lot of people. Dialogue is hard for me. So, we're kind of flip flop that way. But yeah, just considering the environment as well as the creature's design and their physical characteristics and their interactions with other people can really help. I'm going to go into this more when I talk about like character creation or like how to write a character or how to write a main character. If you're going to give them personality traits, you could also do. I know it's really popular with like Dungeons and Dragons and stuff. There's like grids. There's different races you can fuse together. There's like lawful good, chaotic evil, like those different personality breakdowns. Those might be helpful for you if that's how you want to create personality for a creature or a character. Then go ahead and do that. I don't necessarily operate that way. I kind of, like I mentioned before, I really look into the information about whatever I'm getting inspiration from and how they would behave already, and just amplifying certain characteristics more than others. And I think that really helps. I guess this final part of this video that I want to talk about is like maybe designing cute creatures, because I've talked a lot about like scary things, and I know that might not be everyone's cup of tea. And I think this is especially relevant now because like look how much Baby Yoda blew up. You know what I mean? Like cute creatures make money. They sell money. Like look at Pokemon. I have a squirrel tattoo. Like cute creatures sell a lot. So if you're planning on writing like a cutesy creature into your story, I think that's really smart in terms of branding and marketing, for whatever reason. And I think a lot of people have different definitions for what's cute. Like some people think pugs are cute and some people absolutely hate them. That's kind of divisive, and it's kind of like the ugly cute concept that I think works for Baby Yoda. Um, But if you're planning on doing something like that, like obviously that's really objective and or wait, no, it's really subjective. Excuse me. And it's hard to pinpoint that line between ugly and cute. But just like I know this seems stereotypical, and again, this is something that's probably like well known, but if you need me to articulate it for you, I will. Cute creatures should tend to have more soft features. They should be, again, more approachable. Um, there's this kind of rule with like at least visual design that I've noticed that like, sharp edges are scary, and anything with a sharp edge is automatically kind of like a red flag danger kind of thing. So if you need to add something like threat, spikes are something that insinuate danger, right? So their best bet for writing or designing a cute creature is something that is, it doesn't necessarily have to be small because, I mean, look at Tortoro, right? A giant is actually, I think, is written as a gremlin. I don't know what it technically is, but Tortoro, like, adorable, obsessed, right? And it's because it's still big, but it has really rounded features. You see this also in terms of like people. Like I get associated with being very friendly, very open, and of course I smile a lot and I am friendly. But also I have very rounded features and I have very soft features, so that also plays into this like perception of me just being a very sweet person, right? Even before I speak, that is a true thing, whether we want to admit it or not. That happens. Whatever is deemed, I guess, more feminine features tends to be considered like cute, sweet, innocent, feminine, childlike features like chubby cheeks, stuff like that. Obviously, you can break the mold if you want to. I love me some himbo characters. I love me some like scary on the outside but sweet on the inside characters. But again, you really need to develop personality for those, and you might not get the graces to as if you're just doing like a pure creature. So I would really suggest looking at like writing texture for cute creatures, something that's fuzzy, describing the hair pattern, describing a movement in a non-threatening way, things that like float tend to not be scary as opposed to things that like zoom, you know? So yeah, being slower, being whatever is non-threatening. You could do more of a light color palette, although again, people like Toothless, they think he's cute. So obviously he's black. You can, it doesn't really matter in terms of color, but I really think as long as you hit home, texture, movement, reinforcing this idea that this, whatever it is, isn't a threat and it's sweet. Like, we tend to fawn over young baby features, so incorporating that into a creature would make it successful as well. Um, yeah, unspoken rules. And I'm trying to think of something off the top of my head that could probably work as a cute creature. I don't write a lot of cute creatures, so this is different for me. But of course, I given the example of like Jigglypuff's fairly cute. There's a lot of Pokemon that verge on cute, and then they turn into something scary. Um, but if we were to design one right now, everything that's in my head is really just like a puffball. So I'm thinking about like maybe something that lives on dandelions, or like, oh, and then when you blow it away, it like blends in, but then it floats out of the dandelion as well. Something that mimics a dandelion but is not actually a dandelion. And then that way, when it flows out, it can rest on your shoulder. It's something fuzzy, something like maybe even the noises this makes is more like a soft purr or whatever to mimic the texture and movement of like a cat, like a cotton ball cat, I guess, or something like that, or like a miniature tiny thing, or like almost like if it was a pet for a fairy, if that makes sense. So yeah, that's another fun creature design for you. I hope that kind of helped. Granted, there's a number of creatures you can do in between really really scary and really really cute. But yeah, these are kind of my tips. I guess conversely, if you want to make something really scary, all you have to do is add sharp edges. Think about threatening movements. Think about how it interacts with itself and its prey or whatever else it is. Is it something that sneaks up on you that entices fear, or is it something that's just physically overpowering? Size too, I guess, also kind of matters in this regard. If you want somebody to have a really threatening aura, they tend to be bigger. Of course, again, himbos exist for a reason. It's not always that way, but it's just how much culture and lore do you want to put behind the creature. And, you know, you have to, if you're going to make it physically demeaning, you have to give it something that humbles it as well. So that could be like a funny noise it makes, or it could be it being clumsy, right? So it's important to just know your limits. And if you're doing something that is more complex, like a himbo type monster, that you incorporate those two different dynamics. But if you just want to do something completely scary, think about movement, think about sharp textures, think about menacing noises, growling, snarling, all of that. And yeah, I guess that's just the dichotomy right there. So yeah, I hope this video helped you guys. This is my first in my writing series that I'm doing, Writers Wednesdays. I'm hoping to, so I mentioned this before, I was going to make another video, but then I had to go to the hospital. I had to go to the ER over the weekend, so I didn't have time to record anything. I'm totally fine. There's no worries on that front. But I needed some time to rest and recuperate. And so I'm putting this out on Wednesdays. This is going to be Writers Wednesdays, and I'm going to do a video solely about writing every Wednesday. But I am going to do another video in the week that's more just about something casual, whether that be animes I'm looking forward to, Pokemon stuff. I know Pokemon news has been kind of dead for a while. We have like Snap and Unite, but I'm not really interested in that. So I'll cover more Pokemon stuff. I will also do makeup, gaming videos, whatever. That will be a different video every week, and that's just going to be, you know, what I like doing. But this is going to be a series. It's going to be a little bit more structured. So if you're into that, make sure you subscribe so you know when I'm coming and when I'm posting. You could also like the video, comment down below, and share it with a vet friend if you think they'll find it helpful. And until next time, thanks. Bye.